Welcome to day 13 of our daily Bible reading. We'll be looking at Genesis chapter 31 to 33 and Luke chapter 13 today. Jacob now is ready to get out of Dodge and leave Laban. He's tired of these games and he just wants to have his own life with his own family and move on. So he has a conversation with Rachel, Leah, and he tries to explain why he thinks it's time to leave. They agree that Laban is treating Jacob badly, but also that Laban has started treating them badly. Yes, they are Laban's daughters, but things are not what they used to be. And so they agree that it's time to leave. But there's a little weird thing that happens here. On the way out, Rachel goes and steals Laban's gods, his household idols. And they take off. It's a few days before Laban realizes they're gone. He chases after them. Jacob does not know about Rachel's theft. So when Laban catches up, there's a negotiation going on. But Laban also does a big search of Jacob's possessions, trying to find his gods. He does not find them because Rachel is sitting on them. She says it is her time of the month, and in that tradition, women during the menstrual cycle went off by themselves. They had a separate tent. They had cushions that they sat on, and men didn't have anything to do with this stuff because women's blood was considered unclean and impure. So any man who went into what was often called the red tent and touched anything that had touched blood would be impure and would have to go through a ritual of cleaning in order to be able to worship God again. So Laban doesn't touch the cushion that Rachel is sitting on. Now, part of this implies then that Rachel has now made Laban's gods impure and unclean, and perhaps part of the understanding here is they no longer have the power that they used to have. But this is an odd little piece to the whole story between Jacob and Laban. In the end, Jacob and Laban negotiate a peace treaty, and they agree that one will be in one area, one will be in another area. They put some stones up to remind themselves of the agreement that they have gone. They go their separate ways, and that is the end of the saga of Laban. Now, one other thing I just want to point out here is that when Laban shows up and Jacob is talking to him and talking about the flocks and, the speckled, the mottled, the streaked sheep and who got which sheep, there's a little bit of a different explanation of the animals and how Jacob got the animals he got and everything from the explanation with the sticks earlier in this story. And this is one of the examples that shows that there are different sources, different writers and editors that have composed the different parts of the book of Genesis and put them together. There are different grammar structures, different words that are used for God and for different things that scholars have used to show that these are coming from different sources, and that later on, most likely after the destruction of the temple by the Babylonians, that an editor took these different sources and put them together into the format that we are familiar with today. This is not to say that all of these sources were not inspired by God. This is still considered Holy Scripture, even though it may be coming from different sources. But as we read, we need to realize that there are different people putting different parts together, and sometimes things look a little differently as we're reading through there. At this point in Genesis, Jacob, as he has left Laban, is returning to the land where Isaac and Rebekah were living. Esau is still his brother in this area, and Jacob is now a little scared of meeting Esau again. And Jacob at this point is vulnerable. While he has a fair amount of wealth, Esau has military power. And all the flocks in the world aren't going to protect you against a military army. So Jacob is feeling very vulnerable, and Jacob turns to rely on God for his meeting with Esau. One funny thing, though, here is there's a tradition from one of the teaching rabbis in the Jewish tradition that God doesn't look favorably on people who deliberately put themselves in danger and then turn to God for a miracle. This teaching rabbi advocates that we are to avoid danger and not put ourselves in difficult situations and just turn to God to get us out of the pickle that we put ourselves in. So I think this is an interesting interpretation of what is going on here with Jacob's choices. Part of this story of going back and meeting Esau is this enigma story of Jacob having this nighttime wrestling match with a stranger. Now, Jacob during this is alone. Where's all of his stuff? Where's all of his family? Where have all of his flocks gone? Somehow he has separated himself from everything he has, which kind of takes us back to the beginning of Jacob's story, where he has left Rebekah and Esau, and he is alone, and he has nothing. He has no wealth. We don't know exactly who this stranger is. Perhaps it is an angel, a messenger from God. But through the wrestling match, Jacob ends up winning and receives a blessing. And this reminds us of the blessing that Jacob has gotten from his father Isaac. Now, in the case of the blessing from Isaac, Jacob is actually tricking Isaac into getting the blessing. In this case, Jacob wins fair and square in the wrestling match. Now, he does end up having an injury afterwards in his hip, but Jacob has won the blessing, and he is given a new name, Israel, and this is what his descendants will be known as going forward. When Jacob is with his wives and getting ready for meeting with Esau, we see again that Jacob is still playing favorites among the women in his life and among his children, especially in the case of his son Joseph. And this is going to cause no end of problems that we will be reading about as we continue on. But I think we also have to look at this and wonder, who are the people in our lives that we play favorites with? And what are the implications that has for our relationships? Because I think that is one of the great lessons for us to take from the dynamics of Jacob's family, is that playing favorites can cause a lot of problems in the emotional realm, and can really corrupt the relationships that we have with our families. Jacob finally makes his treaty with Esau. Things go a lot better than he expects. This treaty maintains Jacob's independence. As we have read throughout here, and as we will continue to read, this area of land in the world is full of lots of people with different gods, different tribal allegiances, and there's a lot of mixing and matching as famine causes people to move around, as wars come, as empires come through, and there's a lot of assimilation among the different tribes and the different traditions and the different religious practices of the people in this area. And the treaty with Esau really establishes Jacob's independence. Jacob does not go back and move in with Esau's tribe. Jacob is independent. He maintains his own identity. And this is where the tribe of Israel, the people of Israel, really start to take shape and take form. And this sets the foundation for all that we will be reading about as we continue through the Hebrew scriptures. So thank you for reading this section, and we will see you next time.